Hello everyone. Alright, so long time no video. Been busy. Any users of the website, you've noticed it's down for a while. It's been hacked and it's being rebuilt, and it's gonna be rebuilt differently because of that little fella here. So that's the latest project I was working on by accident actually, and it ended up being such a good little car that I'm like, alright, let's try to make a few for other people and see how it can actually be built and repeated over time. So I'm doing some testing now. It's a Trike, it's a freewheel chassis. It would be 110 scale as it's using a 110 scale F1 body, but technically it's 112 wheelbase, and the wheel axle at the back, the wheel in the front. Let me show you quickly. That's my very first prototype that I've built, and the only reason why I actually built this car is because I had a rear axle that I bought by accident and a few pieces of carbon fiber that I hadn't used, and they were strangely shaped. And I'm like, all right, let's see what I can build with what I have. And I ended up building this thinking that's gonna be a ridiculously horrible car to drive, and it's just so fun to drive. It drives really well, it drives quickly, and it handles. So here you go. This is what I've ended up having for the prototype. So I had a pod from a sidecar, an old English sidecar chassis that I had, a plate for the pod at the back, and I had like a piece of graphite that was a little bit cut already here. And I have those C-hubs that I've been printing at home for a lot of cars that I have, and that are holding really well. And so I just started, building the thing around. I had a F103 GT rear pods going around, and I had a Team Saxo axle, and so I just started building the thing. And originally my plan was to find like a very narrow body. I think like you can find on some of the Tamiya buggies, the two-wheel drive buggies. But I didn't want to, bust someone into it, and I had an old F1 body, an old Tamiya F1 body at home laying around. I'm like, alright, let's cut it out, see how it can go. And so that ended up being like a little comical F1 type of look at the end. And so the chassis is extremely simple. I tried different stuff on the rear end. I ran it with a turnbuckle in the middle to try to make it really rigid. I ran it with a damper at the back, and lastly I ran it with nothing at all and just letting the chassis have that just tiny little bit of flex and just a little bit of bend. And it's actually better because the movement is so tiny at the back that it's kind of useful to have it, but it doesn't need to be dampened. It's just such a few millimeters of movement. I've 3D printed a battery tray that's using the super shorty size. And then I had, this is a really basic Futaba servo, it's a 3003 that I had laying around, which I'd only double-sided tape to the chassis because I didn't think there was going to be any violent knockouts, knowing that the wheel is kind of protected with this C-shape over there. And then I built a geometry for the steering very similar to another freewheel that I've built, because I've had the chance to experience a bit with freewheels. I had this sidecar that I built based on the oh gosh, how that's called, a Hunter System sidecar, a really old one. I don't even think this is in print anymore. But while I was playing with it, I had a lot of opportunities to change positions and height and length of turnbuckle and so on for the steering, and to test as well, once again, this little C-hub that I put the front wheel in, and that's just accommodating like a F1 or a 112 little steering knuckle in. And so I just used what I've learned from building this car a while back and the parts that I already have. And so that was the baby that came out of it. And man, you know, you can look at the video of it running. I'll try to make some other video when you see it from the outside. And it's just so much fun. And so here how it basically goes. Front wheel, at the moment that's a super stock wheel. Otherwise I'm going to be building and going to be using like regular 112 wheels. I have just a little spring here, so you have a little bit of travel here. The steering really doesn't need a lot of angle because it turns on a dime. It's so tiny. The wheelbase, I think it's 209, something like that, and it just turns so quickly. And then that's it. Little turnbuckles here. This is the kind of servo horns that you get every time you buy any servo that are just reused. And the servo, like I said, is only double-sided tape to the chassis, and it doesn't move. I've crashed, I've tumbled, I've flipped. Nothing happened to this little thing. It's just fantastic. Motor-wise, I'm using a super tuned Tamiya black can. I'm not sure the size of spur I'm using, but it's a fairly small diameter with a fairly large pinion gear. I'll need to double check. And the Team Saxo rear axle with a ball differential. And so from that, I'll move to the computer later, so you can see what I end up having at the end. But from that, I like, okay, let's actually design the thing and let's see how can I manufacture the parts for it. And so the parts count is actually really low, because I have the chassis that you can see that I've designed. The rear pods, I'm going to have one rear pod that will be available through Shapeways, that will be fully 3D printed with nylon. And then you can use the F103 GT rear pod as well. I need to double check, but the F103 should work as well. The brace for this rear pod is a 3D printed part that I have, which is over here. And in order to make it look better, like I've done here, I had this 3D printed and painted little dummy motor that I had a while ago. So I'm like, alright, this piece is boring. So I've designed a little motor that will be screwed at the back, so that will be sticking at the rear of the car. I'm thinking I can just design any kind of exhaust pipe, engines, or whatever I want for the rear of the car to give people options. And so it's going to have that pod. The battery tray is going to be simpler than that. This one is kind of overkill battery tray. And the one you can see on the 3D, it's only C-shapes on each side, and there's going to be two different sizes, one for mini super shorty and one for shorty lipos. It's going to have a servo mount as opposed to the one I have now. However, I still think the double-sided tape is plenty enough to hold the servo in place, but there'll be a servo mount anyhow. And then just the front, I have the C-hub in one piece. I replaced the servo horn by 3D printed parts, and then the turnbuckles. And for the steering, for the front, where the wheel is going to be attached, I'm trying something that I'm still yet to test on the track. But I've tried to 3D print one, and because I want to avoid getting parts from manufacturer as much as possible, but I can't just order parts because it's going to be a very small quantity, and I'm going to make it just per order, and I don't plan to stock. And so I'm trying one thing. So as you can see back on here now, this is actually 3D printed with the bearing for the 112 wheel. But what I ended up using, the bearing for the 112 wheel is using a 3.1 mm shaft. And so I've used a regular 3M M3 screw that I mounted through the part, and I just rolled a piece of printing paper, just A4 paper, just a little, I cut a little stripe and I just roll it around, and that makes the bearing perfectly fitted on it, and then the nylon bolt at the end. So I'm still yet to try that. I have some spare Team Saxo steering parts for the front that I can use in case this one is not solid. I'll be surprised if this breaks, but nothing will tell me how it works better than just testing it. And so that's the final, well, it would actually be this way. That is actually the final steering assembly. So printed, and then those are parts that I just get from just hardware I get online. And so here you go. So hopefully I'm gonna have the first graphite chassis arriving pretty soon, and then I'm gonna build. I already have one pre-order for it, so I'm building one for a client, and I'm gonna build one proto for myself, and hopefully we can both go out to the track and then test it and film it, and then show all you guys how this little thing works. Because I think this is a really cool little machine. It's quick. It's really fun to drive. It's silly to drive because of the freewheel. You're going to end up with a wheel in the air when you turn too quickly or too sharply in a corner, but it doesn't flip. It doesn't misbehave like the sidecar that I have that have the inline wheel and only one wheel drive, and it keeps up with the rest of the pack on the small track. So that's it for now. That's a bit of a messy introduction, but hopefully you've learned a little bit about the car, and tell me what you guys think. And yeah, I'll keep you up to date when I get what I get the new parts, and then I'll try to make a video assembling it so you can see how the car is built, and how quickly this thing can be on the track. Alright, see you soon.